Welcome into the GoVols247 Podcast. I'm Ben McKee, and I'm joined by Ryan Callahan and Patrick Brown on this Thursday, August 20th edition of the podcast. As I mentioned a few moments ago, we are Peyton Manning days away from it being football time in Tennessee, which is always a good sign and a good feeling for Tennessee fans. A very important weekend coming up for Tennessee because they will hit the field inside Neyland for scrimmage number 2, and we will get to that shortly. But first, we've got to get through all these uniform changes that took place this weekend. And first and foremost, I think you've got to be happy if you're a traditional Tennessee fan, a Tennessee fan who was able to watch Tennessee football in person in 1970. I was not around. Patrick Brown was not around. I don't think Ryan Callahan was around. But Tennessee's going to wear orange jerseys inside Bryant-Denny Stadium next season. Alabama is going to wear its home crimson jerseys inside Neyland Stadium here in a couple of months. That will be quite the sight, Ryan.
Yeah, and Patrick, to his credit, brought this up yesterday, and I immediately knew where he was going with it. No one would be more excited by this news than our old pal Wes Rucker. He was a big proponent of there's no reason in the days of HD TVs, you're not in the black and white TV era, no reason that Tennessee and Alabama, with their traditional colors and crimson and orange being so different, Alabama's helmet looking nothing like Tennessee's especially, that you can't have these two teams in their home uniforms just the way they used to do it until through 1970, before an SEC rule forced them to change it for more than 50 years. So this is, I know a lot of fans excited about this. I talked to some people about it. It's just kind of funny yesterday, and they were like, why is this a big deal? They didn't quite understand the context, and then immediately saw the reaction, which I knew what it would be, on the checkerboard on GoVols247, and it's just universal excitement. Everyone's fired up about this. I think it's something long overdue for a rivalry like this. It puts this rivalry, I think, more on the national radar. It has been, I think, already in recent years, but to get this kind of status where you're getting to have both teams in their home uniforms, I think it puts it kind of on the map a little more nationally in some people's minds. It sets this aside as a special rivalry, I think, which some people, for years where Alabama was dominating it, I don't think people viewed it as that great of a rivalry. I think it's kind of gotten back up there the past few years. And now, this makes it one of those games and reminds people of the history of it. So that for this to be kind of the first of this in the SEC, joining USC and UCLA, and we'll see if any others go that route. But it's something that they should be doing in all these rivalry games probably, but especially this one, as far back as it goes, more than 100 years. Just a great move, and props to Danny White and the Alabama leadership as well for making this happen. And I hope it's just more than a 2-year thing, because I think people are going to like it once they see it on the field.
Yeah, Ryan, as you were talking there, I can hear Wes in my head being like, "Thank you, it's about time." Like, just how he would react to this, and but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, Tennessee tried this. Was it 17 years ago? Lane approached Alabama about doing it in 2009 when Tennessee played down there, and Alabama denied it. I think this was not something that Nick Saban was interested in doing. So now that he's gone, you got two South Dakota natives and Josh Heupel and Kalen DeBoer coaching on opposite sidelines. And really, I guess these teams are kind of similar because they both might be starting young, exciting quarterbacks. But this is, it's one of the best and oldest rivalries in college football. I like that they are sort of tapping back into the tradition of it. Like, this is not something that they're doing just to be new and cool. They're doing it because they did it back in the day, right? And so, that was something that a lot of fans like to see then, and have wondered why they couldn't do it now. And probably saw, like you mentioned, if UCLA and USC can do it, why can't Tennessee and Alabama? And so credit both the schools and the SEC being on board, although according to Lane, the SEC was on board when Tennessee tried to do it, or tried to get Alabama to do it in 2009. So good move. And this will be the first time that Tennessee has ever worn orange at Bryant-Denny Stadium, because they played that game in Birmingham at Legion Field for so long that they haven't worn orange down in Alabama since 1969 at Legion Field. So that'll be cool. It'll be, credit to both schools for working together. It's kind of like, your enemies coming together to make a good point, right? Like, there's like that meme on the internet that's like, the worst person made a good point. That's what it's kind of like here with both these schools coming together. But credit to them for leadership and everybody being on board to get this done, because I think it'll be cool to watch, and it'll add something back to what kind of like you touched on, Ryan. This is a rivalry that's been more of a rivalry lately because Tennessee's been more competitive and actually won a couple games. So this adds a nice little layer back to it as well.
And I'll say this, Danny White, I think deserves a lot of credit just for what he's done across the board. I think people weren't sure maybe when he was just on the job 5 years ago about what kinds of stuff he was talking about, honoring Tennessee's history while being innovative. Like, what does that look like? Well, this is the kind of stuff he's done. He brought back the VOLS signs atop the stadium in different positions from where they were before, but people love that. You're obviously going to keep running through the T, but they add the spotlight to it at night games. Like, he's done all these things to accentuate the history and the traditions that Tennessee has. And I think fans should be thrilled about that. I know there's plenty of things they might complain about, rising ticket costs and all that stuff, but you can't be, if you're a Tennessee fan, I don't think you can be unhappy with what Danny White has done in terms of recognizing the traditions that Tennessee has and calling back to it, if anything, more so than they were before.
The game day atmospheres have significantly improved since Danny White took over. That has come at the expense, no pun intended, of rising ticket prices, as you mentioned, Ryan. But between game day experiences and the money that the athletic department has for facilities, rosters all throughout campus, not just football, it's hard not to be impressed with what Danny White has done. But yet it feels like when you say that out loud, you're almost giving a hot take because of some of the reaction that Danny White gets. And this is for a separate podcast, but that of late, when the Danny White conversation has been brought up, that has been confusing to me as to why he gets such a bad rap or is met with such harsh criticism. But again, that's a separate conversation for a different day. I do have a bit of a different opinion on the jerseys, maybe a little contrarian. I think this is great. Don't get me wrong. I like that they are doing this. I am curious to see how I feel about it when I see it in person. As I mentioned, I was not around in 1970, and I love the nostalgia of it, the tradition of it. That's why I love that they're doing it. I don't necessarily love that they're doing it because of how it will actually look. I know that kind of sounds weird because I'm not convinced that it'll look great just because they are such contrasting colors. And I was reminded this morning on the Swain event that God does change leaves to orange and red in the fall, so it must not be too contrarian colors, but contrasting colors. But I don't know. Tennessee orange, Alabama crimson, they're not two colors that I think go together when I think of colors that go well together. So I don't know that it'll actually look good, but I do think it is really cool that both teams will be wearing home jerseys, and I love the nostalgia and the tradition aspect of it.
Isn't that the point, though, that they don't look good together? I mean, this is supposed to be a rivalry where both teams and fan bases can't stand each other's guts, right? So it should be that it should be that they don't go well together, right?
Well,
that's Tennessee and Alabama.
It's this. I mean, I feel this way. I don't know if many Tennessee fans would acknowledge feeling this way, but I think Tennessee and Alabama have two of the 10 best home uniforms in college football. To have those two on the field together at the same time, the tradition of those looks. I mean, Tennessee's away uniforms have always been they vary more. Alabama's away uniforms don't as much, but it just has a more classic look, I think, to have those two home uniforms on the field at the same time. So, yeah, to your point, Ben, maybe the colors, we'll see how they marry, but I think those uniforms individually are both pretty elite in college football. So I think having those two on the field at the same time will look really good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually made the same point on the Swain event that going off more the traditional aspect and the nostalgia aspect, like Alabama has one of the most recognizable uniforms in all of sports. It's very boring and bland, but it's still as recognizable as any in the sport because of what I know. Alabama football existed before Nick Saban, but certainly what Nick Saban was able to do with the championships he won, that rose quite a bit. But I agree with exactly what you said, Ryan, that Tennessee and Alabama, those colors may not resonate with people outside of the fan base, but it's two of the most tradition packed uniforms in the entire sport. And that is the cool aspect of seeing both of them on the field at the same time, even if one side thinks the other's look is totally hideous. I mean, it's the same thing as like Ohio State and Michigan. Like those are two great traditional uniforms in the sport. Or basketball, like seeing Kentucky. It would be hard because Kentucky and Duke are the same color, so you would never see this. But if like Kentucky and Duke were playing and they both wore their different versions of blue, or Kentucky playing UCLA and UCLA wears their beautiful jerseys. Again, I know there's some similar colors there with like North Carolina and Duke, but North Carolina in the baby blue against Duke in its traditional blue, like that gets me going. It is just seeing two of the best uniforms in the sport with so much tradition packed into them on the field at the same time. To me, Patrick, that's the cool part of it. Although there are some that Tennessee fans are not looking forward to seeing the Crimson in Neyland Stadium, but they are contradicting themselves a little bit because they will equally love seeing Tennessee's orange uniforms in Bryant-Denny Stadium when they return the favor next season.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about Tennessee's colors in general is when they go on the road, like you always know how many Tennessee fans are there because it always stands out. And so it's going to stand out quite a bit when they go to Bryant-Denny next season. But yeah, I mean, aesthetically, it's probably not going to be maybe as pretty as, UCLA and USC. Like those are two other iconic uniforms, that baby blue and gold is looks good anywhere for UCLA, and certainly USC has its look as well. But like you said, Ben, I mean, these are two very recognizable, identifiable uniforms. I would contest that like most people outside the Southeast don't know because, I mean, this has been a rivalry that's been played for a very, very long time. These are two of the winningest programs in college football. Now, as much recently, no, Tennessee has not been on Alabama's level, or at least wasn't for, while Nick Saban was running the sport, but the sport changed and he decided to get out. So the playing field's a little bit level now for everybody. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the best rivalries. I think it's always a fun game. Even, I'm sure it wasn't fun for Tennessee fans when they were getting their brains beat in for 15 years in a row there. I was in college during the 2009 game, the Terrence Cody game. That was not fun if you were a Tennessee fan when you thought you may have been stealing one there. But, that game 4 years ago, I think that game brought everybody that brought this rivalry back to the forefront of the national college football scene. And now it's a competitive game every year that has a lot more on the line than just the tradition and the cigars and bragging rights and all that. Now these teams are both contending and trying to, be in the top of the SEC standings, get in the college football playoffs. So this is a rivalry that's back on it. And it's good that they're taking this step to add a little bit of a traditional look to it as well.
That wasn't the only bit of uniform news that we saw come down the road this week. We also saw this morning, we are recording this afternoon, but this morning, Tennessee released its Smokey Grey uniforms that they are going to wear this season. The last of the Smokey Grey uniforms that we are probably going to see for a couple of years unless something changes. But they are in honor of General Neyland, and it has an interlocking UT on the horse collar, which was worn by the 51 Vols and pulled from a 52 photo. It's actually baseball inspired. UT nods to Neyland's first love, baseball. And
he played a baseball at Army. He was 35-5, and this was in the 19 teens, and that is the second best winning percentage in Army baseball history to this day. Pretty over 100 years later, Ben. What do you think he was? Do you think he was a knuckleballer? You think he was? How fast was his fastball? What was the spin rate on his curve? What do you think? You're the baseball guy.
I pretend to be a baseball guy. He definitely had like a spitball. I could
I could see that.
I could see him doing something like that along those lines.
But how crazy! I mean, he was just one of those people who's just good at everything he put his hands on. It sounds like. I mean, that's pretty amazing. He always thought some of his military accomplishments were some of his most impressive, and yeah, what he did in football. I mean, Tennessee had some dominant defenses under his watch, and then doing that in baseball. That's just one of those guys that succeeds at everything he does, I guess.
that was one of my reactions to this uniform, was going through all the details. Like, it was busy, right? Like, you've got some of the homage to his military background with the star on the back of the helmet. You've got the baseball logo, right? And then there's the blueprint outline sketch looking shoulder pads that were, he was in the Corps of Engineers in the Army and helped build Shield Watkins Field into the stadium, and now bears his name. And still, even 70 something years later, this was 1948 when they started the expansion. That some of the stadium still looks like it did not long after it was built that way, that using his design. So that was a very accomplished man in a lot of different areas, and they're commemorating it. This is the 100-year anniversary of his first year as head coach at Tennessee, and just a lot of details. I got to give credit that the people at Tennessee who, with their creative agency, they I don't want to say left no stone unturned, but they definitely dove into the details about General Neyland and tried to reflect that in this uniform.
It looks like there's no T on the side of the helmet. Is that right? So that, like, how do we think
it's a leather.
Yeah.
It's like the old leather style helmet where it's
the
just
cross
it's
pattern
a cross,
or whatever?
Yes, So if you saw it on YouTube, I was doing it on my bald head, but
fans will probably be okay with it because of that and what it's a nod to. But it will be weird to not have the T on the helmet for a game.
Yeah, no power T. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of it, just from that regard, but I do love the creativity, and it's a good looking helmet. It's just, I don't know, should Tennessee ever not have the power T on the side? And I realize it's a throwback uniform, but not all throwback uniforms look good in modern day. But again, I love the creativity behind it. What are y'all's thoughts on the uniform as a whole? Patrick went through and listed some of those details off. They're also going to have a patch for General Neyland on there. One of my favorite parts is actually more Adidas, and that's the throwback Adidas trifold logo that's throughout the jersey. The pants are what color are we calling the pants? Cream, like the baseball cream.
They look white to me.
White. Yeah,
white. They look cream to me. Maybe
they're eggshell white.
Yeah,
there we go.
Ryan won't get that reference. He didn't watch The Office.
No, he will not. What a shame. But I not my favorite Smokey Grey uniform, but I do like it. My only nitpicks, and I'm just one opinion, of course, but I don't like the not having the power T on the helmet, and I don't like that they're going to be wearing them against Auburn. I am anti alternate uniforms in SEC games, so they will wear them against Auburn, and not that anybody cares. But I don't like that they're wearing them against Auburn.
My biggest problem with them is the white pants. I'm not sure how that's going to look on the field. I think they looked really good once they had the all gray look. That was a sharp look, and they've had slightly different gray colors on the pants. But I think having that gray set of pants did bring the whole thing together, kind of like the right rug, But I do think. I think the helmet and the jersey are sharp. I think the jersey they got right because of the white outline on the numbers, I think, makes the orange pop a little bit more. I think that really adds to the look. So that's a very clean look. I like the stadium outline on the sleeves. That's a nice touch. It is busy, but there's plenty going on. The star on the back of the helmet would be kind of cool, despite not having the T there. So there are some nice things on the jersey and the helmet that I like. I just don't know about the pants, but everything else about it, I think, job well done, and it's impressive. Tennessee continues to come up with different iterations of this Smokey Grey uniform that started off as a very uniform look, and now it's been a year-to-year thing, kind of changing it up. And I wonder where else they can take this, but I think this one's well done on the top half. I just don't know about the white pants.
Yeah, I kind of got four things here. First of all, with any alternate new uniform, you can, we're always going to rush to judgment from pictures, but you got to see how it looks like on the field, because there's been times in the past where you've seen uniforms and then you see them in person and you're like, okay, these are better than I thought. Or in case of dark mode, you knew those were going to be awesome, and then you saw them on the field, you're like, that's pretty badass. Number two, the best Smokey Grey uniforms are always going to be the original Nike uniforms to me. Just with the helmet, made it really good, but the 2015, 2016 teams that wore it, that was the best look. They brought it back in 22, right? for that win at LSU. And of course, I was going back through some stuff for the written content on the site, and I forgot that I had not forgotten, but like you go back through it and you're like, okay, they wore it in 15, 16, 17. It did not again until 2022. So I think I pulled up a Ryan story where he was like, Jeremy Pruitt was like, we're not going to wear these gimmicks. That's what he called the Smokey Grays. 3, the helmet, I'll be interested to see it because I've seen some of these other leather helmet attempts. And it hasn't, I haven't been a big fan of it. I think Illinois is the one that comes to mind.
I do like that they didn't go with the color of the actual leather helmets. The brown, I think, is what makes the modern look of them bad because they're not wearing leather.
Yes.
Right. And this one has orange in it, so that's a good touch too. And 4, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. Did y'all see what Texas A&M unveiled the other week? I mean,
yes,
bad. I don't really mind that. Yeah, the camo. Are they going to wear those against Tennessee? I mean, they might. But like I'm okay with him wearing against Auburn. I guess the Tennessee Auburn, that's an old school SEC rivalry. I feel like they should just wear their regular uniforms to me. But if they lose at home to Auburn, there's a lot more bigger issues in the uniform that they're wearing. I'll say so. I would have probably broken these bad boys out against Kennesaw State, but you have one less non-conference game now, and so one of them is on the road.
Yeah. I mean, Heupel at least doesn't mess with the Alabama game. They've worn alternate uniforms against Florida in the past, but they leave the Alabama game alone. I like that. But I mean, heck, Kentucky's your longest running rival, and they've used dark mode against them and everything. So I don't know. And you don't play Auburn every year anymore. You went years without playing them for too long of a stretch there. So yeah, I know it is kind of an old school rivalry, but whatever at this point.
I guess Auburn hasn't played in Neyland since 2013, which I guess coincidentally was the year that the Smokey Grays debuted, the old Adidas versions that they wore when they almost beat Georgia and then lost to Vanderbilt. So, but yeah, I at this point, are we able to can we go through game by game and say, okay, Tennessee's going to wear this, this, and this? Because like Ryan said, we know that against the Floridas and Alabamas and Georgias, they're for the most part going to wear their traditional uniforms at home. We know there's going to be a game where they want to go double orange, and then obviously dark mode probably be Kentucky again this year if I had to guess. And then they just better never wear orange pants on the road again because that's an automatic loss.
What about orange helmets?
They should be in the river, whatever the closest river is to Williams-Brice Stadium is where those things should be. They're not, as far as I know, but they should.
I'm glad the talk of wearing those again faded. People were hoping that the next year they would wear them again. I mean, it's not that they lost to South Carolina. They just didn't look that good. They didn't match the orange that well. I don't know. Just keep the helmet white. It's nice.
No, it's results based for me. Into the fire.
Fair enough. I think they're over at Carson Newman now. Tennessee did actually donate a lot of its old Nike stuff to Carson Newman. There was a story on that in the news within the last week. In terms of actual football, because at the end of the day, I don't think Tennessee fans really care what Tennessee is wearing as long as they are winning and as long as it's not too outrageous. Big Saturday upcoming. I think that there's a good chance that when Josh Heupel meets with the media on Monday, he names a starting quarterback if the competition continues to play out the way it has over the last several months, going back to the spring. Heupel will meet with the media twice this weekend. He'll speak after the scrimmage on Saturday, and then he will meet again on Monday. And Ryan, I mean, to be very blunt, unless Faison just has an atrocious day and it's turning the football over left and right, and George goes out there and has a great day, to even at that point, I don't know that would stop Heupel because that's just one day, and it's not like Faison has had a bunch of atrocious days. But even that, George is just looking to give, I guess, pause in the mind of Josh Heupel at this point, not necessarily even get Heupel to name him the guy, but just prevent him from naming the other guy the guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, depends on who you talk to. I've gotten a few different takes on what last week's scrimmage, kind of looked like. Because some people will say, George McIntyre flat out wasn't good. Others will say, well, he had some drop balls. Could have been a lot better if he had not had some of those drops. Either way, though, Faison Brandon was the better guy. And most importantly, I've kind of pointed this all along. If you're George McIntyre, you can't be a check down, short passing game guy. You got to make some stuff happen down the field. You're not quite the runner that Faison Brandon is. So to offset that, Tennessee's offense has to be explosive, and they've got to move up and down the field. And just haven't heard enough about the offense consistently driving the field with him at quarterback, and they're not making things happen down the field. He's got to rip it. He's got to let it go and make some things happen. And Faison Brandon did that last week. He completed all 4 passes that we heard about that were for 20 plus yards down the field. So that's the kind of thing George McIntyre's got to do. And to your point, Ben, I just don't know that even if McIntyre has a perfect day and goes out and lights it up, and even if Brandon struggles a bit to go along with that, I don't know that one day is going to be enough to just totally change their thinking, which I think going into preseason camp was that Faison Brandon was more likely to win this job. And I think he's done that to this point. Now, I do think there's one important caveat here to this discussion. It seemed, the fans, I think, have been on Faison Brandon's side for the most part because he's the 5-star. And I think there is this narrative that's a little bit misleading that Faison Brandon's just thoroughly outplayed him. I think the reality is I don't think either one set the world on fire throughout camp. I don't think this offense is humming at a high level with either one right now. I think it's playing okay. But it's better with Faison Brandon in there, and you haven't even gotten to see him the full benefits of what his legs can do for this offense, which could be a big deal, especially for a young quarterback figuring it out. George McIntyre has had trouble getting rid of the ball quickly enough. That's a major concern for a guy who's in the system in his second year. So there's just more. It's not by a just head and shoulders margin, but I just feel like every category is just leaning slightly toward Faison. He's been better at getting rid of the ball quickly. He's a better athlete, has a stronger arm, and he's been more consistent in the passing game, and he's taking care of the ball pretty well. So all those things kind of point to Faison being the guy. And like you said, Ben, there's no reason to think Josh Heupel won't be ready to name a starting quarterback on Monday. The only thing I wonder about is, will there be any gamesmanship? Will he hold back until maybe Monday of game week at least to cut down on the time Georgia Tech has to do a deep dive and prepare for one guy? Does he want to make Georgia Tech prepare for both just in case? I guess you're going back to high school film a little bit on both of them, but either way, does he maybe want to make Georgia Tech's job tougher because we've seen that in the past? Otherwise, yeah, there's probably not going to be a reason to come out of Saturday scrimmage and have a press conference Monday without naming a starter, unless he just wants to have a little fun with it and keep Georgia Tech guessing.
Yeah, my only thought on the timing is, and I can I say that I don't trust the Heupel that he may know who the quarterback is and then just won't, but he won't announce it. Can I say that? Is that fair?
He hasn't done that.
I'm not like saying he's a bad guy or anything. They're sort of sometimes, I don't want to say shady, but they like to keep cagey. That's the word. Thank you, Ryan. I don't want anybody to clip this and say that I said anybody shady. But I also think above gamesmanship, and I think this is different because Heupel is a former quarterback himself, is like, I think he values probably just being up front with these guys and being transparent. And how many times we heard him say that you have to be transparent with these guys when you're going through this process. So, if they come out of Saturday and determine, hey, Faison's the guy, then I think that's when, that's the ideal time to sit those guys down and say, hey, this is the direction we're going. You're going to need George McIntyre anyway. Like, he's probably going to play against Furman just because it's Furman. And just in this game, this is a freshman in Faison Brandon that, didn't play a full senior year. So, he's got to go through a full SEC season if he is indeed the guy. There's still a chance George has got to have to be ready. And so his progress, which he's clearly made progress from the spring. I think, kind of Ryan, you touched on this too. Like it's not been a runaway. Like this hasn't been, Joey Aguilar against Jake Merklinger. And the other thing too, like you said, Ryan, is, maybe the offense maybe hadn't lit it up, but the offense didn't light it up in the scrimmages last year. And then they turn around in the season and Tennessee leads the SEC in scoring and their defense is terrible. So that was a false dawn, I guess. But yeah, I think if we're saying the same things out of this scrimmage as we have last week and even back in the spring, I can't see Heupel not just being upfront and honest with these two young quarterbacks to sort of say, here's the direction we're going. But even in that conversation, you're going to be telling George, hey, you're still one snap away. You're still probably going to play a lot in the first game. So, don't let your guard down, keep your edge, and keep improving, because you never know. And that's, he's got he's got countless, moments from his tenure where guys have been called upon. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but we always hear him say, you never know when your time's going to come. So that's the balance I think he's got to figure out is, okay, we need to pick a guy and go that direction and get ready to roll with this guy, but you also need to keep the other guy engaged and on edge, because you're probably going to need him this season.
And I just don't know what it would take at this point from a Saturday scrimmage when there's really only one left to change your mind at this point, to shift the momentum back in George McIntyre's direction enough to offset kind of the body of work that you have going back to spring practice. I mean, even if George McIntyre went out and threw for 3 touchdowns, no picks, and Faison Brandon threw 2 or 3 picks, would that one day change it? I just don't know. I'm not sure what that would do. It would have to look pretty bad. I think Faison would have to lose it more than George winning it, if that makes sense. Because both these guys have taken pretty good care of the ball, but especially Faison Brandon. So for a freshman not putting the ball in danger, if he doesn't have just a train wreck of a day, it's hard for me to envision him blowing the lead that he probably has at this point.
The counterpoint to that, though, is if that does happen, if Faison goes out there and has his worst day and George goes out there and has his best day, do you guys would that give Heupel enough pause to say, we're going to let this thing, we're going to play both these guys against Furman, and whoever plays best in that game, in a game setting, that's going to be who starts against Georgia Tech. Is that on the table? I think
he's never
no,
done it.
But
he's never done it is the only thing. I think now I've said all along, I think there actually would be some merit, because neither one has thrown more than 9 passes at the college level. You've seen very little of George McIntyre and Faison Brandon, the true freshman. There is some merit to playing both of these guys in meaningful snaps and seeing how it looks in a game. I just don't know that Josh Heupel is going to be willing to do that, because he's never been a 2-quarterback guy. Does that mean, and I think that's his preference, to go with one guy. Does that mean he's absolutely opposed? I don't know, but I know that's his preference to pick one. So I just don't know what it would take. But yeah, if it's that kind of day that it's just one-sided for McIntyre in this scrimmage, maybe there is a scenario where he lets it play out a little longer. I just don't know that he's likely to go with 2 guys and have a true, kind of split decision going into game 1.
If Faison has been as consistent as we have heard he has been, then I maintain the thought that I've shared the last week or so is that I just don't see how one bad day can upend everything else. Even if George was to play lights out, like Faison has been the leader for a very long time now, and we've had no reason to think that Faison wouldn't be the guy for a very long time now. So I just don't see how even one day would upend all of that. So I still think it's just inevitable that Faison is named the starting quarterback regardless of what happens from here on out, even if George is lights out, because there's been such a body of work. It's not been 3 weeks. It's been 6 months. It's been a very, very long time. And Heupel's MO is to name a starting quarterback coming out of scrimmage number 2. He doesn't like to do the 2-quarterback system. He doesn't like to hold off in hopes of making the opponent prepare for 2 guys. He likes to go ahead and get it out of the way, and that's my expectation of what will happen until he kind of proves otherwise, quite frankly. Ryan, what do you want to hear about this football team coming out of scrimmage number 2 outside of the quarterback position on Saturday?
Yeah, and I was just going to throw in, I think Josh Heupel likes to do it that way because he wants there to be a leader on the team. He wants to establish someone and let them come to the forefront for probably more than a week before the season opener. And Faison Brandon, if he's the guy, you want him to kind of start to show, carry himself like the starting quarterback and let the team get kind of coalesce around him. But I think a couple of things you want to hear about this. First of all, you want to hear that key players are out there. They've gotten healthier recently. You've had Ty Redmond back out there. You want Ethan Davis to be back out there and get a lot of reps. You want Rodarius Jackson to not be banged up like he has been with a couple different things at times during preseason camp. So you need those guys out there on a full-time basis. You want to have a better feel for what your team is going to look like in the season opener. So that for starters. And then I think you want to hear that the defense, I will say that just like I mentioned in our last podcast, it didn't sound like the first team defense from what I heard coming out of Saturday scrimmage gave up a touchdown last week. It was all everything that was given up was more the 2s and the 3s defensively. So I think the defense's struggles were a bit overplayed from what we initially heard coming out of the scrimmage. But you do want to hear that the defense maybe had a better day, and I think you want to see them clean up some of the issues they had. That you don't want to give up a 95+ yard touchdown run, even if it's backups. You want to see those second team defensive linemen in particular be a little more solid, a little more reliable than they were in that first scrimmage. So that's definitely one of those things. And then to me, it's still there was a little bit of a step in the right direction last week, but from what I understand, Radarius Jackson didn't play much. He got banged up a little bit in last week's scrimmage. I think he needs to continue to show himself that I think he's going to be the third receiver to open the season if I had to guess right now, but he's got to continue to go out and show that he's the guy. Otherwise, this is the competition that may carry on into the season, and there may be a situation where TK Keys just outplays him one day or over a couple games and moves into the starting lineup. So he needs to start to show that he can be a reliable guy as that third wide receiver. I think that's still a big thing going into this scrimmage. And otherwise to me, it's about just kind of seeing where you are at full strength and continuing to tackle well and play a little bit better on defense.
Patrick, are you going elsewhere, or what is the one thing you would love to hear about this team to make you feel good about them as we at GoVols247 get ready to go on record and say what we think this football team is going to do this year?
Yeah, I would have pointed to the third wide receiver situation. Is there any separation there? Does anybody, play head and shoulders above the other one? Because I think that's still pretty open. But I want to hear more positive things about the defensive line making an impact, and whether that's the first team, the 2s, 3s. You're going to need more than just 4 guys or 3 or 4 guys to get through a season on the defensive line. So you want to hear about more plays in the backfield, more sacks, more pressures, better run defense. I think would be a positive for Tennessee coming out of the first scrimmage, where the run defense I think was lacking. Even though it might have been some of the depth, you're still going to need some of those guys that may have been on the field when you were giving up 99-yard touchdown run to DeJuan Morris. So and you need some guys in the right spots. And I still also I still think this is the final sort of audition for what is this defense going to look like? What are all their options lineup wise and personnel wise, and 3-3 and 4-3, and how many linebackers are on the field, and what do they do at safety? Is it just plug Dejon Lane in there? Is Quay Moss got some flexibility to play back there? What does that look like? So I think that's more the question for me, especially since Ryan took what I was going to say, that, the defense is where I want to see Tennessee come back a little bit better, right? You want to see back and forth from your two sides of the football over the course of a preseason and in scrimmage. And, so if you wanted to give the offense the edge, the offense made more plays, I think, in the first scrimmage. It may not have been, complete dominance, but they made more plays. There was more buzz about the offense, I thought, coming out of the first scrimmage, at least for me. And so I want to hear some more buzz about the defense and them making some more plays and generate more stops than maybe they did in the first scrimmage.
I will add, though, going off of what Ryan said, I'd like to hear the first team offense get in the end zone. And granted, they were essentially without Deshaun Bishop. He didn't get a ton of work, but the defense, first team defense, did not give up a touchdown. And so I would like to hear that, since we assume Faison is going to be the starter, I'd like to hear that Faison was able to get the offense into the end zone, and that it's not all just on Faison, of course, but just that first team offense in general, you would like to hear that they were able to score. Not that will determine how much success they have this season, but it would just make you feel better. Is all. And transitioning to
one more thing I should have added: clean up the drops. We heard too much about passes being dropped in the first scrimmage. That's not a new thing either. It kind of happened in the spring and a little bit early in camp. It wasn't Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley necessarily, but Tyreek King, Deshaun Brame, some of the guys who dropped multiple balls last week. You got to clean that up, especially for these guys that are battling for bigger roles. So I think you want to hear certainly a lot less about balls being on the ground in this scrimmage.
Yeah, transitioning to the player that needs to have a good day, I was going to mention Deshaun Brame because of the drops and poor performance he had last weekend. And I still feel good about that room. I'm not selling my stock on Deshaun Brame. I think it was more of just a bad day than anything else. But all of a sudden, that tight end room looks a little quirky because Ethan Davis hasn't been out there. Deshaun Brame had a tough first scrimmage. Luka Wolf, he's banged up and had to miss some time this week. Is he going to be available in Saturday's scrimmage? Again, I still like that tight end room. Buzz on Trent Thomas is going up, if you want a positive note. But like all of a sudden, that tight end room, there's more questions than we were talking about even just a week ago going into the scrimmage. So on offense, totally agree with wide receiver 3. But if we were to go elsewhere, like I'm looking at Deshaun Brame and thinking he needs to have a good day because of the struggles last week and because of the emergence of Trent Thomas and how he's not going to flash like Deshaun Brame, but he's also not going to mess up like Deshaun Brame.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there's some guys on defense that need to have good days. I think you want to continue to see Dejon Lane establish himself as that second starter at safety alongside TJ Metcalf. And I think they feel pretty good about him, but you still want to see him kind of grow into the bigger role because he was expecting to play this year, but now he's got to be a guy for this defense. So that's a big one. But yeah, definitely agree on your pick, Ben. And I'll be interested in seeing what we hear. I think this group has been a pretty positive surprise, but I'm interested in hearing what comes out of the running back group because it sounds like DeJuan Morris has made a little bit of a move there where he's maybe, I don't know if he's pushing for that number 2 running back job, but he's maybe pushing to get himself more in the rotation than the third running back would have been otherwise. Justin Baker's had a pretty good camp too. So what do we hear coming out of this scrimmage about those guys will be interesting. But that, as far as what Tennessee needs, I'll maybe point to someone like David Hobbs or someone like that up front. You still want to hear more about those guys establishing some pass rush and stopping the run, continuing to show they can be a much better defense than last year. That's I think the biggest storyline about this team in a lot of ways until further notice. The quarterback play is big, but they've got to be a lot better on defense, especially because you might not be able to score 40-plus points in some of these games. You're going to need to win some games that are in the upper 20s or at least low 30s. You're going to need to not get in so many shootouts with a freshman quarterback if you want to win some games. This defense has got to be a lot better, and they got to find a pass rush somewhere.
Yeah, for me, I think guys that maybe need to have show something in the scrimmage. I'll pick 2 guys on offense. I'd go with DeJuan Morris because hey, you turned heads with the touchdown run last week. Do it again. Like if you're gonna, we hear so many. We heard a couple coaches last week talking about inconsistency and ups and downs, and so you make a big play one Saturday, do it again. Have another productive day again. And maybe, it may not end in you passing Javen Gordon for, being RB2, but now Darrell Simmons might say, hey, I'm going to get you on the field and give you a series and see what you can do. And again, I think he's I don't want to say an X factor in the backfield, but he's just a little bit different from what they have otherwise. And so he brings an element there that I don't know that the other guys have. Now, I think what Deshaun Bishop said Thursday, he was hitting 21.6 and Morris hit 21.7 miles per hour on his run. Is hit almost 22. So, I think all those guys have gotten faster. Javen Gordon said he's leaner than he was at Tulane, so he's moving faster. Deshaun Bishop said he got faster despite hulking up like he has. So Morris is one guy that I would pick. And I'm still going to go with Ori Williams. I still think he's going to be the starting right tackle, but it was practice on Tuesday or Wednesday when you watch offensive line drills and they're split up in sides of the offensive line. You got Jesse Perry at right tackle working next to Sham Umaroff, and that tandem is going ahead of Ori Williams with Donovan Haslam. So it's like it's a little bit in your mind, like, okay, is this just motivation for Ori? Is this just a sort of a Glenn Ellerbe seeing what these two tandems look like in individual drills? Is it nothing at all? So that would be another guy I think needs to show up and have a good day. Would be Ori Williams as he tries to finally put the lock on that position and set up and solidify Tennessee starting 5 on the offensive line.
I would feel a lot better about this team if we heard a nice rave review of Ori Williams coming out of Saturday's scrimmage. That would make me feel really good about Tennessee's offensive line. And then, Patrick, I believe you mentioned this kind of in passing at some point, but on the defensive line, to Ryan's earlier point, it doesn't sound like the first-team defensive line had many issues. Guys like Xavier Gilliam, David Hobbs, but in the same vein of Ori Williams, like hearing about some of those young defensive linemen, if we hear about those guys, the Ethan Utleys, the Marion Dyes, we hear about them making plays, all of a sudden you feel a lot better about this defensive line. Now, of course, they would still need to prove that that's going to translate to the season. Can they be consistent doing it? Yada, yada, yada. We get all that. But those last couple of names on the O-line and D-line, I'd feel a whole lot better about this team going into the season opener, but especially against Georgia Tech on the road, which is going to be a physical football game.
Yeah, for me, it's if I was picking a player on defense that had to show up in the scrimmage, I'd probably pick a position, and you need some guys to show up off the edge. I think Jordan Norman's had a nice camp so far, and I think I've said this before. I think Tyree Weathersby is going to be solid. I don't know if he's going to be, what they've had maybe in James Pierce or Byron Young or any of those guys, but you need some more dynamic game changers off the edge, because at some point during the season, you're going to need somebody off the edge to win a one-on-one, make a big play in a big moment. That's at all levels of football. That's why pass rushers in the NFL get paid very handsomely. That's why the Rams traded for Myles Garrett. What they give up? They gave up Jared Verse for him. What else? I mean, so Tennessee needs more of those guys. They've had some of those guys in the past, but they need some of these guys to emerge. And Marion Dye would be one that would stand out. Is Kedrick Olsen ready to play meaningful snaps as a freshman right off the bat? Can anybody else give him anything? And so that would be my question. Like, is David Hobbs part of that equation too? Is he, what does his role look like? Is he going to be more of inside? Is he going to be both? Is he going to be an end? Because they've got some probably more bodies at defensive tackle that they feel better about than maybe off the edge. So they need some guys to me that can show up and get around to David Sanders and get him pissed off in practice about getting the quarterback hit, getting around Ori Williams, even though he's 6'8", 330 something pounds. So they need some of those guys for me to show up. We need to hear about some more sacks from the edge guys, I think, in the scrimmage. They do have some interior guys that could be effective pass rushers. I mean, if I was picking today, I think Xavier Gillen would be my pick for them, to be their sack leader, because I think he's got that capability. Him or Hobbs, I think, both bring that to the table. But, a lot of times those guys, if you're rushing 4 or if you're rushing 3, those guys are having to beat 2 guys, right? Just from the numbers standpoint of pass protection schemes and all that. You need those guys on the edges that are one-on-one with the tackle. They have to go win in some key moments, and we need to hear more about Tennessee's guys doing that in a scrimmage setting so they can translate it to the season.
Well, I'll throw in Tyree Weathersby. I mean, he's the guy here as kind of the constant that Tennessee's playing as defensive end, no matter what package they're in. It sounds like he's on the field most of the time. So if he's a starter, if he's locked in over these other guys, he needs to be productive. And Tennessee's got some questions, obviously, at the other end of the defensive line. Weathersby's, I think that you can count on him as a reliable, steady presence in there, but I think you need him to start to be more of a difference maker. And so I think you'd like to see him show up in a scrimmage like this.
All right, Ryan. Happy opening weekend of high school football. I know there's been some things happen in the last couple of Fridays, but we're declaring this weekend opening weekend. We've got Baylor, Brentwood Academy tonight, Thursday night. That's on the main ESPN, or which ESPN is that one on?
ESPN2, I believe, and that's at 8 o'clock Eastern time, so a little bit later start than usual for the TV broadcast.
It's on ESPN2, but it's at 8 o'clock.
That's right.
But not ESPN Ocho. Don't go there.
I see what you did there. Anything else that Tennessee fans need to watch this weekend? There's a lot of high school games on the ESPN family of networks.
Yeah, I believe the NFL Academies game was on Thursday afternoon on YouTube. They were playing Marietta High School from the Atlanta area, went over to London to play them. That's a fun little trip to open the season. But yeah, that's where all eyes are going to be Thursday night. That's the main one to watch this week. I mean, you got 3 of the top players in Tennessee's class, between 5-star running back David Gabriel George of Baylor, and then the 4-star linebacker Kenny Simon, and the 4-star wide receiver Keyshawn Bowman from Brentwood Academy. It was a great game last year in the state championship game. There are a lot of people that think Brentwood Academy could win this game, even on the road, even though Baylor's the defending champ. So it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully the weather cooperates. There's at least a chance of some thunderstorms interrupting things. I've been around too many lightning delays in August in recent years, so hopefully it stays clear. But yeah, it should be a fun one, and we're really interested in seeing how much David Gabriel George can kind of steal the show. Expectations are obviously through the roof He's one of those guys that's hard to bottle up for 4 quarters. So against good competition like this, always fascinating to see how many times he gets the ball. Obviously, Tennessee fans will be crossing their fingers saying, please don't get hurt. But just how much does he get the ball, and can Brentwood Academy bottle him up a little bit for 4 quarters? It's just hard to do. But what kind of numbers can he put up? We saw him have a just massive number against McKee in the playoffs last year. Does he have a game like that? Is it more just like, just 100 or 200 yards? What can he do in a national spotlight kind of game? But he was ridiculous in very limited work against Buford in his scrimmage a couple weeks ago down there against good competition. If he's anything like that tonight, he's going to put on a show.
The weather should be considerably different than it was in December at Finley Stadium, where it was about 40 degrees and it poured the whole time. But yeah, that game, DGG, like you're watching, you're like, they're doing an okay job bottling him up. And then you look at the end and he's still got like over 200 scrimmage yards and a couple touchdowns. So that's when you're a beast, is when like you think, hey, they haven't been run all over, but then he's still, that's a ho-hum game for him. That's what he produces.
Well, if he only goes for 100 or so, it's why Ohio State didn't want him. If he goes for 200, 300, he only went to Tennessee because of the money. So those are the only possible outcomes.
Should throw in a reference, if you haven't heard our commitment podcast Monday to hear Ben and I discuss Tennessee's edition of Caden Kraft, the 4-star 2028 quarterback. Please go do that, and you can hear the in-depth discussion there. But that was obviously a really nice start to Tennessee's 2028 class. Some of the 2028 guys in that game, if you're watching Brentwood Academy Baylor, they've got some talented guys in the 2028 class. Antoine Adams is a safety at Baylor that moved in this year and is a highly ranked guy that has a Tennessee offer. Brentwood Academy's got a couple other guys that Tennessee's recruiting. So talent all over the field in that game. There's a Brentwood Academy lineman committed to Auburn, just all sorts of talent on both sides of the ball. So and of course, I don't think you'll see him tonight unless there's an injury, but this is the official high school varsity debut of Marshall Manning, the 2030 quarterback. You'll probably hear a reference to him at some point during the broadcast just because of who he is, but he's the backup to Ole Miss commitment Keegan Croucher. So don't think you're going to see him in the game tonight, but he's one that's going to be a big deal from day one, obviously, with the name and everything that's going to come along with that.
How quickly does the broadcast show Peyton? I say pregame warm-ups. I say the intro video to the broadcast, they show Peyton walking around.
I could see it. I would not be surprised. Will he be there? That'll be interesting too. I don't know how he'll approach that this year with not expecting Marshall to get into a lot of games, especially a game like this. But what if he did get into a game like this? You would think he's going to be there, but I'll be interested in seeing if he goes to every single game or just saves that a little more for when he's actually going to get to play.
Will ESPN cameras catch Ryan Callahan during the game? Is my question.
I hope not.
Well, yeah, we don't need to wish that evil on anybody. But no, there's apparently assigned sidelines for everyone. They're expecting a lot of media there tonight, so we'll see where I am. Hopefully, they don't put me right in the line of the camera every time, but never know. I might be right there by the first down marker every game. You have
a standard to uphold after Ben McKee was front and center during a key contentious part during Tennessee's NCAA tournament run. Was that the who did they play in the second round?
That was the Virginia game.
Virginia. There was a disagreement in the corner, and Ben in his beautiful pink shirt was sitting right there, head, taking it all in. I tweeted that the referee should ask you for an opinion.
They should have. I would have given them one. All right. We'll have all sorts of coverage this weekend of Tennessee athletics. It's a very busy time for multiple sports across campus on the recruiting trail, and we've got it all covered for you at GoVols247.com. For Patrick Brown and Ryan Callahan, I'm Ben McKee. This has been another edition of the GoVols247 Podcast.